Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pleb Underground. Happy Friday. Looks like we got some bounce. People bought the dip. That's right. Actually got a phone call from a friend who hasn't looked at Bitcoin in like 5 years, and he was like, "This is the dip we buy, yeah?" So, yes, it is. It is. Anyways, all right. At least we can end the week on a good note. And guys, as you know, I've got a very special guest joining me today. I've got Lauren Rodriguez. She is Keone's wife. For the people who don't know who Keone is, he is the co-founder of Samurai Wallet, and we all know the story, guys. Every single day, I sit here and I remind everyone these two gentlemen are sitting in jail for writing code, while we literally have banksters and politicians that have wasted billions, if not trillions of dollars of taxpayer money. And these guys, they get bonuses. They roam around free. And you've got people writing privacy tech that are going to jail. So it's important, okay? Privacy is important. Personal freedom is important. Anyways, I'm very, very happy that Lauren is joining me today. I'm super excited to have this chat. And we are going to get into it in just a few seconds. Let's frickin' go. Pleb Underground is sponsored by Archimedes Emporium. Discover the pinnacle of precision engineering, starting with their Bitcoin logo wall clock, meticulously machined in Maine from a solid block of aerospace-grade aluminum, ensuring unparalleled durability and performance. Experience the difference of a product made without compromise. Head on over to Archimedes Emporium. All right. Welcome, Lauren. How you doing?
I'm good, Phil. Thank you so much for having me on.
Honestly, I am deeply humbled because I know that, of course, what's happening with Samurai Wallet, I'm sure that many people are trying to get your attention. And so I really appreciate your time this morning / noon. So yeah. Hey, good morning, Eastside Tony. That's right, guys. If anybody has any questions for Lauren, drop them in the chat. We are definitely going to do our best to get to them. But for the moment, I'd like to start off just by finding out exactly how has it been the last, I mean, we're February 6th now. If I'm not mistaken, he had to report to Morgantown December 19th. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's been, 40 some days now. So yeah, we're approaching the 2-month mark, and it's hard. And in some ways, I think him being inside, he's kind of getting a routine and a rhythm. And, a lot of people said that's really what you need to have while serving time in prison. And kind of out here, I'm trying to do the same. At first it was hard to, just your daily life with a spouse is, or a partner, you kind of go through things, and it's the habits that you don't even really maybe aren't cognizant of, but then you miss when they're gone. And so that took a little bit to get used to. We were talking briefly before we started that, you and I both have dogs, and I'm in Keone's office right now doing this, and there's a door that he would come and for the first maybe 2 weeks would come and look for him and hear, because that's he worked a lot. I think most people know, working in Bitcoin or being involved in Bitcoin, you were at your computer a lot. So, that's where he was used to seeing him. So the dog would come look for him, and he's kind of stopped that. And, I hope he just thinks he's on a trip or something, and he'll be back soon. But yeah. So
if it's any consolation, most likely the dog, because of your behavior, understands that it's stressful, but that he is coming home. Believe it or not. At least this is, it could just be a cope on my end, right? Where I'd like to imagine that like they understand totally. But yeah, I think so. I do think so. So let me ask you this, because obviously I'm curious about this. When it first happened, right? I'm talking about when he first had to report to the jail, and you came home. Did you have the feeling? I don't know if you understand. I don't know if you've ever gone through this, but it's like the feeling of like going through the motions, right? Like you're just kind of having to deal with this. right? So it's almost like you're almost like doing stuff, but your head is like in another space. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but did you experience any of that at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it was kind of a strange time too, right? Because this was right before this judge, she really had it in, and that was part of kind of our reasoning that it was the right decision to take the plea, that she would have given him life if she could have. But sending him in, sending him in right before Christmas was just a vindictive move on her part completely.
Thank you so much for mentioning this.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, so like after dropping him off, right, you have the Christmas festivities, and you have, we had, in some ways it was nice because it was a distraction, and we live very close to my parents, and my kind of brothers came in and their wives, and so some ways it was a distraction, but in a lot of ways it was, as you said, kind of floating through. Okay, now get up, make coffee, feed the dog, where there's someone missing through, that's usually with you through those steps. So yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking about, because you mentioned the, because I also obviously I think most of us thought that it was an incredibly petty, shitty move to have him report to prison right before Christmas. Like, excuse my language, guys, but it's like, fuck you, like, come on, it's like you're about to put me in jail for something that, in all fairness, should not be going to jail for, and you're gonna rob me of Christmas. Like, this is, rob my wife of these memories. It's just, anyways, I really had a hard time with this. Okay, so we're gonna back up. We're gonna back up. Did you ever think for a second that this could happen? Like, did Keone ever be like, listen, Lauren, the government is insane. I mean, obviously you guys have, your views that you have, but it's like, did you actually think that it would come to this?
No, not for this company, at least not in the way it did, right? We thought the laws could change, but they were operating, right? They started Samurai Wallet in 2015, operate for almost 10 years. They were following the guidance put down by FinCEN, which is the regulator who controls financial service businesses and, that kind of stuff. And so if you're following it, and they built out Whirlpool, they built out their tools to stay within the guidelines that were given. So their intent was to follow the law, and they did know, right, that the way this country works, there could be another Patriot Act or something that came in that then would make what they were doing illegal, and they would have to shut down, or they knew that was a possibility. But the fact is that before the raid on April, I think it was 24th, they had no contact. The FBI, no people ever called and said, hey, can you help us out? Or, hey, we think a criminal is using your service. They never sent it's called a spoliation letter, which is like if HSBC or some bank is under investigation, they'll send them a letter and say, hey, don't destroy any evidence, you're being investigated. We didn't receive any of that. Our first contact was the raid on our house, and a simultaneous coordinated raid on Bill in Portugal. That was, yeah.
Was it one of those things where they showed up at your door at like 7 a.m?
Oh, it was 5 a.m. It was still dark. We were woken up. Oh. Yeah, we were woken up. The dog barked. They surrounded. We live in a little historic village, in a little cottage house on a corner. And so they had vehicles lined up on the whole block around. They have an MRAP out front with a light on a crane rising up, announcing on a bullhorn, come out of your house with your hands up. We went out. There was laser sights on our chest, both of ours. They flew a drone through the house. There was, 40 agents. These are HRT, hostage rescue agents, and with night vision goggles and, fully armed, fully tactical gear, again, for something that a letter to a lawyer, a phone call, just like they're not doing this to JP Morgan, the president of JP Morgan Chase. They're not, right? Like, this is,
It's a show. It's a show. It's meant to shock you, right? It's meant to stun you. It's meant to completely throw you off guard. It's so I can't even find the right word. I'm like thinking vindictive, but that's not it. It's just like malevolent. You know what I mean? It absolutely wild. Okay, so there was no precedent. There was no precedent for this at all, and it just happened. So let me ask you this: like once the dust, and the dust hasn't actually settled, so I guess it's a terrible way of framing it. But I guess that particular situation, once the dust settled, what evidence did they actually have? Because to my knowledge, they're just referring to a bunch of tweets, like because of like, because of the Russian oligarchs and stuff like that, and the sanctions, and then like and again, I don't know if it was Keone or Bill who responded back, and it's a tweet. Was that it? Was there more?
You're completely right. There was every piece of evidence was either a public or private statement, many of which, I mean, you mentioned the Russian oligarch one. That was a meme template that if you would search welcome new, you would find about 8 different, it was just a meme template. They thought it was, there's a couple on there that he still finds really funny. So if you want to go look at it, it's still up there. They never deleted anything. And so it was private messages. It was other things, but everything was taken out of context. So, again, they ran this wallet we're developing and working on this wallet for 10 years. If you go through, I would charge anyone listening, go through your messages with people that you've been talking to every day for 10 years and see if there's not one single line that can be taken out of context to sound like it means something that it doesn't. So there was a lot of that. And then then they had the blockchain data, right? And we never, because we didn't go to trial, never really got into analyzing this. But what they claimed is that there was about, Whirlpool capacity was about 80,000 Bitcoin. And then they claimed that it was a rather small percentage. And like some of the numbers within that they're citing are like 44 Bitcoin, 49 Bitcoin, 153 Bitcoin. Like these are the amounts that they're saying are proceeds of crime. And I don't know how we would know that, right? Like,
it's
but also the fact that there's such, it's not exactly. So we don't know who's sending it in. Again, it was designed that way so that they wouldn't have to do KYC. They wouldn't have to do AML. And the largest number that they claim went through was they claimed 1,500 Bitcoin from Silk Road went through. Well, Silk Road was shut down in 2013. And Whirlpool didn't start until 2021. So again, these are, it was never analyzed because we just didn't get that far to do that. But was that someone who was a seller? Was that someone who was a buyer and just pulled out money? Like if anyone's done any kind of blockchain tracing or analytics, it's very, it's all based on heuristics of probable likelihood of connection. Yes. And that's what Whirlpool helped to break. But also it's a probability. It's not 100%. Or it's very rarely 100%, I'll say. So we don't know where, the percentage of likelihood that these even, what they're claiming is Silk Road was Silk Road. And again, according to FinCEN, who was the regulator in charge of licensing and money transmission, they didn't need to know. They didn't need to have KYC. They didn't. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Okay. So let me ask you this, right? Because now we're at the point, right? I mean, obviously, in terms of following the different podcasts that you've been on and stuff, if I'm not mistaken, you did go on the Nat Brunell on her podcast.
That was Keone did hers, but yeah.
Keone did hers. Thank you. So super sorry. I get confused with. So okay. So now there's definitely more attention to it. Has anything seemed to improve? Is there anything kind of happening? I mean, obviously there's a whole bunch of us, right? We're kind of in an echo chamber saying free samurai. I know that Econo Alchemist is every single day he tweets out pardon samurai, and he puts out all of these, these super, in-depth, analyses and stuff like that, and trying to engage people every single day. And there's a whole bunch of accounts like that have anything come of this? Is there any hope that he is not going to spend 5 years sitting there for writing code when, in fact, at this point, it could be argued that Bill Gates could be sitting there forever, right? Like, let's be honest, right? Like, it's everything is a double-edged sword. My phone can be a weapon too. So does Apple, does like everybody on the board of directors at Apple go to jail, because somebody's using a phone to do sketchy shit?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, really, the novel theories put forth in this case that developers, people who write code, are responsible for the actions of the users of that code really could be applied to pretty much our entire lives, physical and digital. So as far as hope, I have hope. Maybe some people might say I'm naive, but I really think there is, right? There's a couple points to that. We just passed our 15,000 signatures on our petition, which, thank you for everyone that signed. And, we really want to keep growing that number because, right, it shows that people do care about this. And the other thing is that, this office, it was the Southern District of New York who came after us, is the same office that came after President Trump. So if anyone's going to understand, right, that like kind of the lies and the manipulations, who has is in a position to pardon them, we're in a good position there. Now it comes down to, right, we need people to talk about it and to make enough noise so that it goes to him. And, thankfully, right, we had a question asked of him at a press briefing about this case. And, he charged Pam Bondi to look into it. We haven't heard anything from that. But again, I think they've been I think everyone knows there's a lot of things going on in the news right now. So it's been pretty busy. But I do hope that they will, get around to seeing us and granting us a pardon, because, I mean, every charge that they put out in the indictment is answerable. It was all, like we talked about earlier, it was things that they said that was taken out of context or, twisted in a way to make it sound not as intended. I'm like, it just scares me, right? I think about the legal system. And of course one of the things that brought me to Bitcoin is I was debanked in Canada. When I lived there, I went through an experience where all of a sudden, and I actually did not do anything. The reason why I'm prefacing this is because it is so scary to me that that something like this can happen. And okay, let me place it into two things. Something like this can happen. We understand that, right? It's just the way it is. But the second piece to it is that even with evidence to support your own claims that you haven't done anything wrong, that Keone hasn't done anything wrong here, it's worth nothing. And then of course, right, I mean, I've shown this 1,000 times. The biggest rails for money laundering were banks like Standard Chartered, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase. These guys get slaps on the like. Is it not like deep inside, like, does it not just feel like gaslighting? Yeah, and I'll address your first point. First, you said that you think people understand that these things can happen, and I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, but I don't think most of the American or maybe global population does think that. I think that they do have faith in the justice system, that they don't put the wrong people in prison, and maybe it's a self-protection of, well, if they could do that, if they are innocent, then that could happen to me. And I think that's really scary for a lot of people. Coming through this, I think also people think, well, if you are wrongly charged, well, you just fight it in court and you'll be able to get your evidence. Well, I didn't realize until going through this, and maybe other people do know this or didn't, but like the judge they really affect the outcome of a trial, right? They get to decide what witnesses you present, what evidence you present, what kind of defense you're even allowed to put on. Like they could just say, no, you can't say that. In the Roman Storm case, and their judge, looking back was actually almost friendly comparatively. But she wouldn't let them say privacy. Like, she would not let them use the word privacy in front of the jury. So, and then our judge just, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard me say this already, but she denied any amicus briefs, which are friend of the court letters, to help her understand the technology better. This is, an 80-year-old woman. What she can, like this, she specializes in law. She doesn't specialize in Bitcoin. Why would she? But she denied. She didn't want any friendly, amicus briefs. She didn't want to hear anything about the Brady violation, which is where the prosecution withheld evidence for, so 6 months before they indicted, 6 months before they arrested, they went to FinCEN, again, the financial regulator who's in charge of licensing, and said, hey, do you think the Samurai Wallet guys need a license? And they said, no, they don't take custody. We don't think they need a license. And when they withheld that for over a year, and that's exculpatory evidence, and by law, they're supposed to hand over every piece of evidence, whether it's exculpatory, meaning good for the defense or not, and they did not do that. Well, she didn't even want to hear anything on that. She just denied that, and then she also denied our motion to dismiss without any discussions or presenting it in front of her, oral arguments, and then she just again flat out denied it and didn't give any reasoning as to why she was denying it. So when you have a judge who, and that was our first appearance in front of her, because previously this was just Judge Denise Coates. A few days before we were supposed to go and have arguments on all of these items, it was supposed to, our judge at that point for a year was Judge Berman, and like I said, a few days before we were supposed to go argue all these motions, our judge suddenly gets changed to Denise Coates. We go in front of her. She denies everything. It was about a 5-minute hearing. And we realized, this is the math completely changed. So at that point, I guess I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but at that point, the prosecution came and offered a plea. And that's, I think a lot of people think, well, why did you plea? Why did you, and there's a lot of factors when they come and say, we'll drop the 20-year charge, and you realize, well, the judge is going to do the full thing. And then also the fact that, BPI was great and helped us raise $1 million that was split between the two defense teams. So, that was really wonderful. Bitcoin Policy Institute. And, but to fight a complex legal battle within the Southern District of New York, to go to trial will be around $13 million per defendant. And this is clearly a complex legal battle. We don't have that kind of money. We're currently, getting to the point where we are, we're about, a little over $2 million in debt. It's just, they just beat you down where, there's not, unless you are a billionaire, there's really no way that you can, fight this. It's really tragic. But that's how we got to where we are.
That is a serious. I really appreciate you shedding light on this. That is a really broken system. So look, in everything that you're explaining to me, I'm wondering at some point, like, I'd start to feel that this was rigged against me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like because we're, when you don't go through the justice system, you believe. Maybe you believe the bullshit, right? That justice is blind, right? And that's all they're trying. But from everything you're explaining to me, justice sounds rigged. It sounds rigged. It sounds focused. To me, it genuinely sounds like this person was just the judge, obviously, was just out to get you. Like, what was just out to get Keone and Bill at whatever cost. It didn't even matter. Something else though, right? It makes me think of this. It's going to sound terrible, but how you have these older politicians, they never have a problem sending young people to die, right? In these wars, right? It's okay. You go die over there, it's, the guy's like 80 years old. Like you just said, this lady's 80 years old. Like, hell, she can keel over tomorrow. What does she care? but it's what Tony said here in our chat, right? It's about notches on the belt, like and it's just so sad because it is supposed to be about justice. It is supposed to be about human life. So curious, who else besides Bitcoin Policy Institute, if you can, I totally understand if you can't name any groups or businesses that have assisted, but is there anybody else that has stepped forward and really helped in a big way? Or
there was at least 2 personal friends that gave loans to help cover this, but again, we would obviously if we're able like to pay them back, because they were generous enough to do that. But it's interesting. There's a lot of talk about the Bitcoin community, and is there a community, isn't there? And it's different, and I think there's a lot of parallels because Roman Storm, Tornado Cash on Ethereum was going through this at a similar time, and they have a different ethos, the Ethereum people, but to his benefit, and all Roman deserves all the support he got, but he was able to get a lot more support, and I think that again has a little bit more to do. Maybe they have a little more community mindset over there. I'm not sure what, but so that's hard when you hear people, oh, well, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you, I would have fought. I would have kept going. And this and that. Yeah. Well, okay, but you weren't in our shoes. You weren't facing 25 years. A bill is, I believe, 69 years old. So that's potentially life, right? That's right. Keone would be old man when he got out if it was 25 years. And on top of that, they were pressing, they wanted to put a judgment of the $240 million, which they claim it was the illicit amount that went through Whirlpool. Now, again, I don't know if those numbers are accurate, but they know that they never had custody of that because, as much as they like to frame this as they were transmitting, they know that they know a little bit enough to how the software worked that they didn't have custody. And that would then, if you come out of prison after 25 years and have a $240 million judgment, you're never a free man. Oh, no. That hangs over you for life. And then on top of that was like, how do you fight this, right? You have no money to fight it. And lawyers don't want to work for free. They're in it for a reason. So yes. Yeah.
We've got some comments here. We've got some comments from Bitcoin Beacon saying this is exactly what people need to hear. I agree. Thank you very much. And Verhoofdy Floofin, welcome. And he says, "Hey, Lauren, thanks for coming on the show. Yeah, we really appreciate you joining us and telling us this. It's not easy to talk about. For me, I look at it like I think of difficult situations in my life. I would definitely have a difficult, time talking about it. So I really appreciate, I appreciate you coming on to be able to talk about this and being able to talk about this so well. Continuing on, have you been able to visit Keone at this point? Because I know that once you get into the federal prison system, it's not like all of a sudden somebody can come visit you the next day. There's like a process, if I understood correctly. Have you been able to go visit him?
Yes, thankfully, because I'm his wife and I was able to fill out, they did background checks and all that. I am, and also thankfully because we live about hour 45 minutes north of the prison, I am able to go down. I usually go down on Saturday, so I'll go down tomorrow morning and spend the day. And you're sitting there, and it's not because it is a minimum security camp. It's you're not sitting behind glass or anything. We sit in these little, I don't know, they feel like elementary school little plastic chairs, and there's we have to sit across from each other, and there's kind of weird rules, but it's at least I get to see him face to face. So that's really look forward to that every week.
Can you hold his hand?
No, you can hug and kiss when you come in and then when you leave, but no touching in between that time. So you just sit and talk. And I guess there is a cabinet with some very abused board games and probably a deck of cards missing half the cards, but we just talk. There's some vending machines. So, that's kind of, you can't bring anything in from the outside, which, I just want to be like, please let me bring in, like, I'll order, I feel like if it was school rules, right? If I order enough for everyone, can I please do this? But no,
everybody gets home.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not trying to smuggle anything in a pizza. Like, I just would prefer not to eat whatever's in the vending machines every time, but that's fine. It's all worth it to be able to spend some time with them, because they do have phone systems, and he is able to call me every day. But if anyone's talked to anyone in a prison, the phone systems, I mean, everything's monitored. So like that's fine, but it's kind of a weird thing that, there's potentially a third person on every call with you. And then just the quality of the calls is really bad. And there's, a woman who speaks about every 5 minutes and goes, something about you're speaking with a federal inmate. And it's like, oh yes, I do know that. Thank you for interrupting the flow of conversation. And then it's also limited to 15 minutes, and you only have so many minutes a month. So you really have to budget out when you're going to do phone calls and for how long. And so being able to see him in person is it's such a better situation. And unfortunately, right, like there's, and I don't want to forget him, right, because him and Bill, Keone's partner, and Sabrina are going through this too, and they have it worse. He's serving, obviously, prison here in the States, but she's not an American citizen, so she had to return to Portugal. So they only have the phone system right now, and she has to wait a certain amount of time before she's able to come and come back over. That's just how the system works. You can't just fly over whenever you want. So she, hasn't been able to go and see him in person since he's been in. So, as much as it's a terrible situation, we really have been blessed in the best of a bad situation that I can go see him so frequently.
How do you, I know we kind of talked about this before at the beginning, we touched lightly on the, your routine, but how do you stay motivated, during all of this, right? Because we talked about this at the beginning, right? It's like all of a sudden, right, that person's not there anymore. And I remember I read your post where you dropped Keone off at the prison. And then when you got home, you immediately, it's like you went to go text them to tell them, hey, I'm home, but there's nobody to text. So what are some things that you're doing to just kind of stay motivated?
Well, I've been trying to stay busy, thankfully, people like you have been gracious with your time and your platforms, and had me on, because I feel like that's at least helping somewhat, that I'm continuing to keep their names out there and keep the message out there that this is an injustice, and hopefully it will be fixed. And it's so from this experience, so many people have also reached out to me that are in similar situations, who have been wrongly, had lawfare used against them, and gone after them, and so I feel like, and I've said this a couple times, that even if Keone's released tomorrow, and I pray that he is, but like my eyes have been open to what's going on. So like I couldn't turn it off now. Like I feel like I need to keep speaking about the truth of what the justice system is. And I'm not saying like do away the whole thing, right? I think we all know there are bad people out there, but it just needs to be revamped. That the notch of the belt comment was so apt, that this is when you have prosecutors who don't care about truth, they don't care about justice, they just care about, okay, is this going to get me a notch in the belt to be either then promoted, go into politics, or go into a 7+ figure a year salary at a private firm. Like that's the motivation. The motivation for them is not, okay, what's the truth of the matter? Or so kind of continuing to raise awareness about that kind of stuff, I think is important to me now. You mentioned about the texting. They do have something called core links, which is a weird version. It's kind of like email, but it's delayed anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, like on each end. But they have an app. Yeah, prison email. So everything again is, communications monitored and read.
Mhm.
And you have to be pre-approved to get to be able to email. But they have an app, and so I do almost now use that, even though I know it's going to be delayed and I won't hear response back for hours and hours. At least there is that kind of familiarity. Can't say that word, with being able to message him now when I get home from the prison. I made it home safe. So yeah.
Okay, so at least you get a little bit of the routine back, but it's still, if you ask me, a derivative. It's like a hey, there he is. There he is. He mad. It's okay. It's okay. He can be mad. It's all good. I don't blame him. Okay. He feels the difference in the vibe. Okay. He feels the difference in the vibe, but he has hope.
He was not a barker before all this, and I swear he has PTSD from the raid still. Like, I mean, really, the cars drive by and he's on edge. That's what it was. A car just drove by and he's like on alert. And I feel so bad because I mean, you can't explain to a dog that this is unlikely to happen again, right? Like, it's just, he doesn't understand that the raids aren't a normal occurrence. But yeah.
It's okay. He's in the office now. It's all good. He's there. He's protecting you. He just wants to make sure that you're going to be okay. That's why he's next to you. You know. So
yeah.
it's okay. So let me ask you this. I'm sorry. I'm going around in circles because I'm at the same. It's kind of like this. Like a fascination, and at the same time, right? It's just this deep understanding. Like I think that. A lot of times when something happens far away from us, right? Whether it's personal or whatever it is, it's almost like it doesn't affect you because it's, I mean, they've done psychological studies on this, right? How you can cause somebody else pain, and as long as you don't see them or hear them, it's, that kind of stuff. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is I'm just going back to the legal system. What did you so far, what has been the most challenging thing about the whole entire legal process? Like, if you can pick one or two things that like shocked you or something, like, I can't believe this is a system we exist in. Can you think of anything in particular?
Yeah, and maybe again, it shows my naivety and I guess before this, but like the blatantness of the lies that the prosecution said, and they didn't seem to have any problem with it. And the judge clearly, some of the stuff maybe she was just believing at face value, but some of the stuff, like, that's wrong. Brady violations are wrong. It's another thing they did was, so when you submit motions, it goes, defense submits a motion, in this case to dismiss, and then there's, a certain amount of time, and I forget what it is, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks or something. And then the prosecution submits the reply, and then it goes kind of back and forth like that in writing. That's how these motions work until you go and present in front of the judge. Well, so after we submitted our motion to dismiss, the prosecution came with a superseding indictment, meaning this is a new indictment. And then after that, when they submitted their reply to our motion to dismiss, the only thing they really said in that was more or less, well, you didn't address any of these items in the new superseding indictment that was submitted after so it's just like stuff like that. That's just, anyone knows that's underhanded, that's wrong. Yeah. And yet they do that and like pat themselves on the back that they're the good guys. And so that was, and they get away with it too. So that was very surprising to me. Yeah, I think that was probably the most shocking thing. And then also, I guess, maybe coming to understand how much that a jury trial, the juries don't get to hear the facts, all the facts laid out and then make a decision. No, they hear a very curated set of statements or facts that the judge has already determined, what they hear and what they don't hear. And that completely changes the trajectory of a trial. There was a case not too long ago, and I wish I remember what it was, but it was something that went before two different judges, and two different juries with two different judges, and one jury found innocent, one found guilty with the same facts. It's the same case, but it really does depend on the judge, and they are kings and queens of their courtrooms. There's nothing you can do. I mean, yeah.
Stupid question. And again, it's my own naivete, but how does the judge get chosen? Who chooses because to me, it just seems like, it's like, if I'm trying a case that's technical, right, I'd want to have a technical judge. And the reason why I'm thinking of this is because I also paid attention to the, I don't know if you know anything about Craig Wright, the fake Toshi, right? The guy who pretends. And I mean, this went on for years. He harassed Hoddle a lot, like all kinds, the space cat, like there was all kinds of stuff, right? And then of course it all ended up coming to a head in the UK court. And Judge Mellors, I believe his name is, he was pretty freaking technical. Like, this guy was able to shut down stuff that Craig was saying. And, I just feel like, it's like, how did that judge get chosen? Like, how did we end up in a situation where there wasn't a technical judge that could understand what you guys were saying? Because I genuinely feel, or shouldn't say feel, but think that this person just had no idea what you were saying the whole time. In all honesty, it was just like guessing,
Yeah.
But she was sure that you were wrong. She was sure that Keone and Bill were bad.
Yeah, she just bought. I mean, she was. So this judge is, and again, she didn't really hear that much from us. She got a couple submissions, and then we presented from her, and she denied everything. The issue is because she herself was a career prosecutor in the same office that brought charges. So her job before becoming a judge was the lead prosecutor in the criminal division of the Southern District of New York, DOJ, Department of Justice. So she's, you're going to have, and we all have our natural biases, right? But like sometimes you can kind of try to suppress them a bit, and that's what she should have done. But no, she just took for word, okay, these guys say they're bad guys, they must be bad guys. Like that was all she needed. She just believed exactly what they said. Because why would these prosecutors lie? And I think we know why. But that's, it's how it is, unfortunately. It was, as far as how they get picked, my understanding previously was that it was, random selection, and then your judge stays with you. I mean, your judge is supposed to stay with you, through trial and then after trial or after sentencing. That's why it was kind of weird. And it does happen, right? That a judge, if they get sick or they might need to recuse themselves for some reason. We have no idea why Berman stopped being our judge when we got Judge Coates. Literally no idea. Judge Berman's still a judge. He's still hearing cases. And he was actually one of the few judges, and why we were ready to go is he's one of the few judges that wasn't previously a prosecutor. He comes from I believe a defense background, but it might have been some other kind of litigation previously, but he was not a prosecutor before becoming a judge. One of the very few on the SDNY that is.
Would you happen to know if he's a little more technical than Judge Coates?
No, he would. He's also a gentleman who's in his 80s. And I know, as far as that's what like the amicus briefs are like, right? A big part of this. But the thing is with our cases, so much of it was, or should have been, because there were conspiracy charges. So a conspiracy charge, both charges when they brought us, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money service business and conspiracy to money launder. So those were the two charges that were brought against us. And for a conspiracy charge, the government is supposed to prove that the parties, so I guess Keone and Bill and these criminals, went into an agreement to violate federal law. Obviously, that didn't happen. There was no, and they never, even tried to present someone saying, I'm a criminal, and I, spoke to these guys, and they said, yeah, we'll launder your money. Like that didn't happen. They didn't have that evidence. If they had that evidence, it wouldn't be a conspiracy charge, right? So the way they presented it was by creating software that could anonymize Bitcoin transactions, again, non-custodially. Just by the act of creating the software was the conspiracy.
Oh,
So because knowing that, criminals could use, and I think any sane person would realize that criminals use a lot of technology that's not intended for their use.
No,
Guns,
that's exactly
knives,
it.
cars, those are just like physical things, let alone internet, VPNs, Bitcoin,
Cell
right?
phone.
Cell phone. Yeah. Like I think everything that's out there, a criminal will use.
Of course.
Yeah, but
Especially if it
that was
reduces
that was a conspiracy according to the government. And
completely mind-blowing.
yeah, and I don't want to live where that's the case, right? Like Bob Barnett, who he part of ocean mining and stuff, and he made the point that right, you're saying that they conspired to and transmit and all this stuff. Well, he made the point that really a transaction's not a transaction until it's included in a block. So like it's just such a dangerous place to go. And hopefully with the Clarity Act and stuff coming through, that gives some kind of they did the
after the fact.
That was the Phil C down there saying the ruling of code of speech. Yeah, they kind of blew that out of the water with this. I don't think they cared much for that.
It didn't apply here. It didn't apply here because they were trying to do a job, so it's I genuinely believe they were trying to make an example. I genuinely believe that this was all done in order to set a precedent. They attempted to do this with Roman Storm, okay, and it didn't exactly work. This is what they're trying to, and I say they. It's terrible because you call it the government, whatever you want. I don't even know. Okay, the rule makers, but I am at that point where I can't help but see it this way. We are getting a question though from Phil C. He's asking, can Keone appeal?
So because they pled, they waived the right to appeal. I think there's some things where if it's a constitutional issue, they could appeal. But the issue with appealing is, one, it's very expensive, and two, sometimes that process can take as many years as he's going to serve. So that's really why we've been focusing more on the pardon aspect. Yeah, because, I think it's valid. I think, there's, if you look at the case, if you really look at it and, you don't, some people just want them to be guilty because that's how their minds work. But like, I think if you come at it with a kind of open mind or willing to look at the facts, you kind of go, yeah, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem how it should be. It's again, like, the Clarity Act, hopefully it does relieve some of this, but the issues are the way that they presented this is one, these were novel charges where they were going against the FinCEN guidance anyways. And also, as you mentioned, in Roman Storms. And they said in that case, well, we're the DOJ. We don't have to abide by what other government regulators are saying. So there's that. They just think they're above everything. And then on top of that, and on top of that, there's still something within the U.S. law called the willful blindness, which that they could have easily applied to this, that because you chose knowingly that criminals could use this software, and chose not to look for criminals, I guess. I don't know how that would work, preemptively, looking for criminals. But
bullshit.
Yeah, but this is something that's part of, U.S. law that they can just pull out. And like, again, if you think on it, like how it could be applied to, Lightning, node operators, miners, like just within the Bitcoin space, it gets really scary. And there are people, as you said, like within the state, and it's, there's, I think everyone kind of knows the names that they don't want to let up control. They don't like Bitcoin because it does give people back control. And they're all throughout the system. There was another judge in the same as Southern District New York Court as our case and as Roman's case and some of these other cases, Judge Radkoff, who said cryptocurrency currently serves no positive purpose other than providing a platform for fraud and crime.
Oh my
so
gosh.
If you have judges that's their right, that's all of cryptocurrency. That's all it's for. They can't see past anything else. And these people are in positions of power until something, and it might be a cultural change where, more and more people see the need for Bitcoin. And so they come into it. And that, obviously has and will hopefully continue to slowly shift people's opinions. But, it really will take some change before this risk is off the table. Thankfully, new people haven't been charged, but yeah, Roman's case is still ongoing, and Keone and Bill are currently sitting in prisons.
The moral hypocrisy that I'm seeing, it does not escape me in any way. It's so scary to me that people like these judges who are supposed to be educated and who are supposed to be discerning. Okay, that's, I think, the word that we're supposed to use. They're supposed to be discerning, and yet that's the bullshit that they're choosing to believe in. That is, I'm sorry, like, for me, that is just scary as hell. Okay, for real. Like, that is just totally scary. Like, how do we even lie about justice being blind? It's like, how do we even do that? We did have a question from Tony. Tony is saying, ask if they had a previous case law they pointed to, or is this the first time something like this has been tried?
So they didn't point to any previous case law as such. I think in their reply, they pointed to a couple. So when the way a motion to dismiss works, you have to take everything in the indictment as fact, and you submit your motion to dismiss and say, even if all this stuff is true, you need to dismiss it on the basis of the law. And we had submitted our motion, and I thought it was really strong. We were citing case law going back to like bootleggers who sold, or no, it was sugar manufacturers who sold sugar to bootleggers. And that was ruled, and it had gone up that, but it was ruled that they were not part of the conspiracy because they did not take an active position in manufacturing the illegal alcohol. And then we also cited a case from the 90s, and it was to do with a grow light guy who advertised in High Times. And, he even said, I don't want to know what you're using these for, to a seller. And he was charged as conspiracy to, grow. And that was also overturned on appeal and said, no, he didn't have, just by having a product that could be used for something, you were not part of a conspiracy. And so we thought those were very apt. Obviously the judge disagreed, if she even read them, I don't know. But they are, and then also the government's response, those are publicly available somewhere. I couldn't point to you where, but if you wanted to read their legal justification for doing it, I think it was a lot, bringing these charges was a lot weaker.
I just, in listening to this, and actually I want to go back to something that you mentioned about Roman Storm and the Bitcoin community and altcoins and stuff like that. And again, this is my own personal opinion, not really drawn from fact, so to speak, but essentially, right, there's a lot of VC money that goes to altcoins, right? Whereas with Bitcoin, it's a lot more, proof of, so to speak, proof of work, right? There isn't so much VC dollars, floating around the Bitcoin space, because in all fairness, you're building around an open protocol that you can't make your own, right? You can't build a castle with it and force everybody into your little Gale, so it's very difficult. Whereas with altcoins, right, you can make a token and then you can sell it to people, right? And then all of a sudden you take all of that gain and of course, right, you can go and, give money away and, help a little, help more people out. So I think there's a bit of a difference, a difference there. But the one thing that I wanted to say as well about that was that something that did make me happy was to see, right, a lot of people being able to put a lot of this petty stuff aside. Like for me, it's like, yeah, sure, I hate shitcoins. I think altcoins are a scam and all that good stuff, but I don't believe that Roman Storm should be in jail, right? It's like, once we start talking about personal freedom and freedom of speech, I'm done. Like, I don't even care anymore about your shit coins and whatever the hell. Like, it's like, no, we are talking about human life here. We're talking about like time that you can never get back, that gets stolen from you by a giant machine that doesn't give a shit. So it's a very, to me, it's like, no, now, you know, it's like, now you're messing with everybody. And, you know, I kind of wish, it's hopeful. I kind of wish that more people, you know, were able to remove that line and just be like, this is bigger than, you know, this is bigger than some shitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. With Rome, and I think, you know, they had some bigger, I think some companies that are involved in the space that they did donations, but kind of to your point, right? It's almost like the big brother, little brother. I can pick on you, but you know, someone else messes with it. Like you got to kind of come back together, because again, the same thing they use on one case, they're gonna turn around and use, and that's what people, and I try to get it out, because a lot of people, they think, oh, you're the privacy weirdos, like, oh, that doesn't matter. But again, what they're saying can affect, as we've said, lightning and miners, and it can go outside and affect, you know, speech, you know, messaging apps, privacy messaging apps, or VPN. Like, what the novel theories they put forth in this case affect way outside the Bitcoin or the crypto, you know, ecosystems. And so that's why everyone really should care, because, you know, there's people that say, oh, why should I care about privacy? I have nothing to hide. Well, first, that's not true. But, you know,
you do.
It's just, yeah, you do. Everyone does. That's why you have doors. But so it's just like those kind of, it's just lazy thinking. And that if anyone does sit down and thinks a little bit further, I think they'll realize that, oh, this is an issue, and this is potentially an issue for, you know, for them personally, or for something they care about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is like exactly the point, right? It's like, and this is where, to me, we end up really seeing the, it's probably a bad way of framing it, but just, you know, like essentially the substance that somebody is made of, right? Their real convictions, what somebody is at their base. It's like, if you can't put all of that petty shit aside and realize that it is the state versus you, no matter what, like, you got another thing coming. You know, it's really scary. So for me, it's like, yeah, you know, look, in all fairness, right? I watched a lot of the petty arguments between Wasabi Wallet and Samurai. I had a friend that worked for Samurai, okay, and he absolutely used to sing Keone's praises all the time, right? And you just watched all of this drama all start to unfold between these two camps. And I get it, right? Like, these are, you know, tech bros, and they're arguing about their shit. But the point is that both of these guys are out there in the world, right? These two teams, they're building their stuff. I'm a happy camper, because they're free to build what it is that they want. And then all of a sudden, Wasabi Wallet bent the knee. They bent the knee first. I forget now totally what ended up happening, but they started to remove part of their services and change them and everything, just to make sure that, you know, nobody was gonna come and stop them. Sorry,
it was an article in the Financial Times that they wrote. This person contacted both, you know, Samurai and Wasabi, and kind of posed some questions that was accusatory to them. And I don't know, maybe the government read the article, because some of the stuff that they said was very similar, and they did, and they kind of tried to, okay, well, we'll implement some kind of whitelist, blacklist, and all this stuff. And that's, first, you know, Bitcoin's is a push system, so it's really hard to stop. It's not a pull. You're not pulling things, you're pushing. And then, but on top of that, it didn't even, right, it did have the arrest and prosecution of Keone and Bill for Samurai did have the chilling effect that I think was desired. Wasabi pulled out of offering services to the US. I think they shut down their offering of coordinated coin joins altogether. And I think someone else spun up, and there's an Ashaguru who spun up from on the Samurai code. But right, it's a risk in there. You know, they're very brave for doing it, but like, I don't think developers should have to be, they shouldn't be in the position where they're put at risk and they have to, you know, really hide, and they can't have a Twitter handle, they can't be on place, you know, all this stuff, because of fear of they will be locked in a cage for writing code. And that is currently where we are, though. It's sad.
It is sad. The one reassuring thing that I've always reminded myself is they can't lock us all in a cage. I mean, metaphorically, I guess you could say we are technically in a cage anyways. I mean, the whole world is a cage, so to speak. And, you know, we can get really philosophical about all of this, but they can't, it's like they can't put us all away, right? It's the same way.
It was slightly funny nod to that. So you said you can't put us all in a cage. There's a poster. So Keone is at you maybe have heard this before. Keone is at a prison camp, and so they don't have any fences, but there is a like motivational poster in his dormitory in the prison that says something along the lines of the only walls of your prison are the walls that you build in your mind, or something like that, which is such like either someone has a really twisted sense of humor that hung that up, or like just how messed up is that? But yeah.
I mean, look, it definitely could be seen as gaslighting. I guess maybe if we try to look at it from like the the kind of like higher level consciousness or something like that, it's like there are no prisons, right? It's just what you think. Yeah. But then, you try to go and be with your loved one and you'll find out there's a freaking wall and there's a guard and he's got a gun. Okay. So it's like all of a sudden, no, those walls are real, So yeah, it's just crazy. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because I want to talk about the Women of Bitcoin conference, right? I saw that, you were added as a speaker, and hopefully, yeah, there it is. And make sure I'm popping up the right thing. So whether you're brand new to Bitcoin, curious about it, or already building in the ecosystem, this is your invitation to learn, connect, and get empowered. Join us for 2 days of real talks, inspiring panels, all completely free, guys. Okay, totally free. Definitely worth it. I'm going to be signing up. I'm going to go and attend this. So, what are you going to be talking about?
So I'm going to be on a panel, and we're talking about, big surprise, kind of the legal stuff and where, yeah. So I think, hopefully I don't have a law background, but I'm going to, I think the other two do. So they'll be the more technical thing, and hopefully I can add, a little bit here and there to them. But the women that they've been able to gather together to speak, I think there's gonna be a lot of really interesting talks, like all around. And like you said, you don't have to go anywhere. You can sit on your couch and just log on for free. Like, it's really cool. And hopefully people get a lot out of it, and hopefully it's just the first of many.
I think you guys are going to get a much bigger audience than you think. I remember. All right, well, whatever. But I remember like there was definitely either it was an online conference or like a hackathon. It could have been both. It was like just around COVID, right? When everybody was just locked up. And I remember that there was so much more engagement than the organizers thought was actually going to happen. So you'd be pleasantly surprised, right? You'd be pleasantly surprised how many people are going to show up. And it's going to set a precedent, right, to have these more and more. And I saw some, anyways, not that I want to get into this too much, but I saw some stupid comments, right, about it, because people are people and guys are guys. And it's just the way it is, right? But yeah, like, I mean, if a person genuinely has a problem with women getting together that believe in Bitcoin, that believe in personal freedom and want to talk about Bitcoin and create a stage for themselves, like, if the guy has a problem with that, like that's a you issue. That's a them issue. So I'm sorry, because
this isn't a pandering where, I mean, maybe it's a little bit pandering because they're having me on it, and I'm, but no, I appreciate that they're giving me the platform. But this isn't like, right, these are all women that are accomplished in the field. They're not just being put up, and it was put on by women, and it's not exclusively for women, but it's a spot that hopefully, like, if you have a wife or a girlfriend that's kind of into it, but kind of like, it just seems like a boys club. Well, no, it's not. And you can kind of show them and maybe open their eyes, and then they'll be into it too. And you guys can talk about around the dinner table, and they won't be so annoyed. So there could be good that comes out of it, right? So for all those guys that are like, yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of good that comes out of it. I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to pay attention to see what topics you guys are going to cover. look, I really appreciate you joining me today for this talk. It's not easy. I got to be honest. If I was explaining some of the stuff that you were explaining, it sounds cheesy, but like I would have definitely been choked up. So I appreciate your courage. I genuinely do. And guys, it's always the reminder, right? I talked about this yesterday. Great financial crisis. $19 trillion was lost. Not a single fucking banker went to jail. Nobody. They got raises. They got bonuses. They got to buy up broken businesses for pennies on the dollar. And yet, Bill and Keone are in jail for writing code. Privacy, freedom, preserving code. Please consider signing the petition. And if you feel so inclined, please consider donating. Lauren, thank you again very much for joining me. It was absolutely amazing. I hope that you have as good of a day tomorrow as you possibly can with your husband. It's make the memories. That's really all that matters, right? And if you could just hang out for a second after the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Phil.
Absolutely. And oh yeah, one last thing. Sorry, I totally forgot about this. Where can people, if you want, where can people reach you, and where can they sign up for the Women of Bitcoin? This information will be in the show notes.
Well, that's good. Just in the show notes. If they want to learn more about the case or the link to the petition and some other things, they can go to Bill and Keone.org. And if they want to follow me, you're going to have to follow my name. When I created my X or Twitter handle, I never expected, I was, private, never expected anyone to ever follow me. So it's not an easily translated one. So you have to check that in the notes, as well as the sign up for the Women of Bitcoin is down there too. So please do.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Guys, all of that is in the show notes, even though it seems like I sprung this on her. I was ready for it. All of that info is in the show notes. Please consider signing the petition. Please consider donating. Everybody, have a great weekend. As you know, Monday, I'm back. Daily news, 12:10 p.m. Eastern. And then Monday night, we're doing Bitcoin tonight. It's going to be spicy. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Peace.